Hey, yo, hey, welcome. Good morning to Finding Grace. Okay, so I know we were in Matthew, and we're going to get back to Matthew, but I've been reading something that I just got to read to y'all. So I'm going to actually start doing two series. So our first series, of course, is going to be as we've been out of the Sefer Bible, and we've been in Matthew, reading through the New Testament. But we're going to go back to the Old Testament because, as I told you all, I was in the midst of, I purchased this books of the Ethiopian Bible. And if you see this subtitle, Missing from the Protestant Canon. So if you kind of do a little bit of research on that, which I found out, by mistake, but a good mistake, a godly mistake. And so the Protestant canon, right, which was the book that came to the United States, only contained 66 books. That's it. The original, one of the oldest Bibles known to man is the Ethiopian Bible. It contains 100 books. And it's interestingly enough that I started reading this. I didn't start reading this book from the beginning. I jumped straight into something called Maccabees. Okay. And Maccabees, just for a brief explanation, is basically it's such a to me an integral part of the Bible that is missing. Now, why these men when they came to the United States decided to take these out, I can only postulate, and I can postulate a lot of different things, but I'm not going to. But what I am going to share with you is that this story, and what they have removed from the Bible, is kind of the story of, it's the story that explains how priests and why the priesthood ended and why Christ came. So it's a huge missing part. I mean, like, when I started reading this and gathered the knowledge of understanding, it is insane how that they could simply decide, oh, we're going to take these Bible books out. And the reason that, to me, these are what I've been reading, that things that were taken out of the Bible, these are to me, some of the most strongest faith individuals I have ever seen, heard of, or read. And so, it's disappointing that, right, this was not in the New Testament in terms of, or the Old Testament in terms of the American Bible. I call it the American Bible because that Bible, to me, was made and disseminated to perpetrate slavery. That's actually basically, to me, what, unfortunately, that Bible was cut down to. And it was also cut down, I think, in a way by the Catholics, in a way to kind of not to take out what had happened to the priests. So this is why we're going to delve into this, and we're going to get into this. And I hope you join me, because some of this stuff is going to blow your mind. All right. So we're going to start from the beginning. I didn't even start from the beginning, so I'm reading fresh today. So please forgive me, because usually sometimes I have to go look up a word or something. But either way, this Bible is in English, which is great. That's another reason it's being, and there are actually, all of these books have not yet been translated. I think in this book, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So there's an additional 24 books, right? We knew there were 66 books in the original, plus an additional 24 basically makes that, 90 books. So there's still about 10 books in translation. And so the first book of the Ethiopian Bible is called Esdras. Esdras. And the word Esdras means helper. It means helper. And so Esdras 1. Let's get it. And Hosias held the feast of the Passover in Jerusalem unto his Lord, and he offered the Passover the 14th day of the first month, having set the priests according to their daily courses, being arrayed in long garments in the temple of Yah. And he spake unto the Levites, the holy ministers of Israel, that they should hallow themselves unto Yah, and to set a holy ark of Yah in the house that King Solomon, the son of David, had built. And he said, Ye shall no more bear the ark upon your shoulders. Now, therefore, serve Yah your God, and minister unto his people Israel, and prepare you after your family and kindreds, according as David the king of Israel prescribed, and according to the magnificence of Solomon his son, and standing in the temple according to the several dignity of the families of you, the Levites, who minister in the presence of your brethren, the children of Israel. Offer the Passover in order to make ready the sacrifices for your brethren, and keep the Passover according to the commandment of Yah, which was given unto Moses. And unto the people that was found there, Hosea gave 30,000 lambs and kids, and 3,000 cows. These things were given of the king's allowance according as he promised, to the people, to the priests, and to the Levites. And Helkias, Zacharias, and Selesis, the governors of the temple, gave to the priests for the Passover 2,600 sheep, and 300 calves. And Jechonias, and Semias, and Nathaniel his brother, and Asidus, and Ochiel, and Joram, captains over thousands, gave to the Levites for the Passover 5,000 sheep and 700 calves. And when these things were done, the priests and Levites, having the unleavened bread, stood in a very comely order according to the kindreds, and according to the several dignities of the fathers before the people, to offer Yah, as is written in the book of Moses. And thus they did in the morning. And they roasted the Passover with fire, as appertaineth. As for the sacrifices, they sod them in brass pots and pans with good savor. And they set them before all the people. And afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests their brethren, the sons of Aaron. For the priest offered the fat until the night, and the Levites prepared for themselves, and the priests their brethren, the sons of Aaron. The holy singles also, the sons of Asaph, were in their order according to the appointment of David, to wit, Asaph, Zacharias, and Jeduthun, who was of the king's retinue. Moreover, the porters were at every gate. It was not lawful for any to go from his ordinary service, for their brethren the Levites prepared for them. Thus were the things that belonged to the sacrifices of Yah accomplished in that day, that they might hold the Passover, and offer sacrifices upon the altar of Yah, according to the commandment of Hosea. So the children of Israel were present, held over the Passover at that time, and the feast of sweet bread 7 days. And such a Passover was not kept in Israel since the time of the prophet Samuel. Yea, all the kings of Israel held not such a Passover as Hosea, and the priests, and the Levites, and the Jews held with all Israel that were found dwelling in Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Hosea was this Passover kept. And the works, or Hosea, were upright before the Lord, with a heart full of godliness. As far as the things that came to pass in his time, they were written in former time, concerning those that sinned and did wicked against Yah above all people, and kingdoms, and how they grieved him exceedingly, so that the words of Yah rose up against Israel. Now, after all these acts of Hosias, it came to pass that Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, came to raise war at Charchamas upon Euphrates. And Hosias went out against him. But the king of Egypt sent to him, saying, What have I to do with thee, O king of Judea? I am not sent out from Yah, a God, against thee, for my war is upon Euphrates. And now Yah is with me. Yah is with me, hastening me forward. Depart from me, and be not against Yah. Howbeit Hosias did not turn back his chariot from him, but undertook to fight with him, not regarding the words of the prophet Jeremy, spoken by the mouth of Yah, but joined battle with him in the plain of Megiddo, and the princes came against King Hosias. Then said the king unto his servants, Carry me away out of the battle, for I am very weak. And immediately his servants took him away out of battle. Then got he up on his second chariot, and being brought back to Jerusalem, died, and was buried in his father's sepulchre. And all in Jewry they mourned for Hosias. Yea, Jeremy the prophet lamented for Hosias. And all the chief men with the women made lamentation for him unto this day. And this was given out for an ordinance to be done continually in all the nation of Israel. These things are written in the book of the story of the kings of Judah, and every one of the acts that Hosias did, and his glory and his understanding in the new law of Jah, and his understanding in the law of Yah, and the things he had done before, and the things now recited are reported in the book of Kings of Israel and Judea. And the people took Oikaz, the son of Hosias, and made him king instead of Hosias his father, when he was 23 years old. And he reigned in Judea and in Jerusalem 3 months. And then the king of Egypt disposed him from reigning in Jerusalem. And he set a tax upon the land of 100 talents of silver and 1 talent of gold. The king of Egypt also made King Hokam, his brother, king of Judea and Jerusalem. The king of Egypt. And he bound Joachim and the nobles, but Xerxes, his brother, he apprehended and brought him out of Egypt. 25 years old was Joachim when he was made king in the land of Judea and Jerusalem, and he did evil before Yah. Wherefore against him Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came up and bound him with a chain of brass and carried him into Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took of the holy vessels of Yah and carried them away and set them in his own temple at Babylon. But those things that are recorded of him and of his uncleanness and impiety are written in the chronicles of the kings. And Joachim, his son, reigned in his stead, and he was made king, being 18 years old, and reigned about 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem, and did evil before Yah. So after a year, Nebuchadnezzar sent and caused him to be brought into Babylon with the holy vessels of Yah, and made Zedekias king of Judea and Jerusalem when he was 21 years old, and he reigned 11 years. And he did evil also in the sight of Yah, and cared not for the words that were spoken unto him by the prophet Jeremy from the mouth of Yah. And after that Nebuchadnezzar made him swear by the name of Yah. He forswear himself, and rebelled, and hardened his neck, his heart, he transgressed the laws of Yah, God of Israel. The governors also of the people and of the priests did many things against the laws, and passed all the pollutions of all the nations, and defiled the temple of Yah, which was sanctified in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, the God of their fathers sent by his messenger to call them back, because he spared them and his tabernacle also. But they had his messengers in derision. And look, when Yah spoke unto them, they made sport of his prophets, so far forth that he, being wroth with his people for their great ungodliness, commanded the kings of the Chaldees to come up against them, who slew their young men with sword, yea, even within the compass of their holy temple, and spared neither young man nor maid, old man nor child among them, for he delivered all into their hands. And they took all the holy vessels of Yah, both great and small, with the vessels of the ark of God, and the king's treasures, and carried them away into Babylon. As for the house of Yah, they burnt it, and brake down the walls of Jerusalem, and set fire upon her towers. And as for her glorious things, they never ceased till they had consumed, and brought them all to naught. And the people that were not slain with the sword, he carried unto Babylon, who became servants to him and his children, till the Persians reigned, to fulfill the word of Yah, spoken by the mouth of Jeremy. Until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, the whole time of her desolation, shall she rest until the full term of 70 years. All right, so that was when Esdras 1. And so I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about this because I haven't really done the back study on this. I've been reading Maccabees, not this, but it does put into perspective a lot of information that I'm finding out later now. And so I'll share some of that with you. And so there is one thing here that when he begins in talking, he's talking about the Levites, the holy ministers of Israel, right? In verse 3, he says, they should hallow themselves unto Yah, and set the holy ark of Yah into the house that King Solomon, the son of David, had built. Understanding more Leviticus and Levitical law, okay? And, you know, like we as a people always want to be like that group, right? We see that group, we're like, oh, we want to be like that group. And Leviticus is a huge, right, problem for some in the Bible, because Leviticus has all these laws. And if you don't understand them, you think that every man is required to live by these laws. And I submit to you that this is not true, okay? The Levites were a very special people. And if you actually go into Maccabees, I'm reading, I think it's actually in Chronicles, First Chronicles 2, I believe, First Chronicles 1 or 2. But either way, I'm reading in Chronicles also about David. And David, at the time that I'm reading him about, he just becomes king. This is David had just become king, and his friend, a very good friend of his, ends up touching the ark. They're transferring the ark because David's decided, hey, we need to move the ark back, because this bark, as you've seen, this ark has been taken. This ark has been, you know, taken by kings. This ark has been moved. This ark has been tried to be sanctified, but right, all these wars keep happening, and the temples are defiled, the arks. So basically, you know, Jerusalem is in kind of a chaos, right? In terms of where it doesn't have a settled home, let's say, we'll call it a home for God, right? And so these Levites, if you'll see in that story, David is upset because David actually gets upset with God because his friend dies after touching the ark. The ark's about to fall, and he tries to hold up the ark, and God kills him. And David's upset because he's like, wait, you told me to move the ark, but you killed my boy? Now, he really never has this whole conversation with God, but you see in his actions later, and you'll see in the story, David does some things, and I think it stems from this. It stems from he's confused that why would God kill his friend, when he told him to move the ark. But if you see here and you go into the study of the Levites and you listen to God's word about what he says about the Levites were a ministerial population, right? And here it says they should hallow themselves. This is because to do that work so close to the ark, to do that work in the inner sanctuary of the temples, you had to be holy, 100%. If you weren't, right, we know in the past, priests went in and never came out. They just died. Touch something so holy, you died. This was before Christ. Okay, so he had to tell them so specifically, you cannot do these things. If you want to be a priest, if you want to be close to me, God, I am holy. Men are completely unholy. So if you want to be the person between men and me, you have to separate yourself out as a Levite. You cannot do anything considered unholy. Now, that is a special population of people. They had special requirements because they were doing a particular job for God. This was not to say that all men had to do all these things. You had things that Levites, couldn't have sex, right? Some of them were eunuchs. Some of them, they don't eat certain things. They can't drink certain things. They can't do things like men. They have to do the things specifically 100% like God, or else they will die. And so this became a problem. And this is what is so beautiful about, I think, this book that now I'm realizing as I'm reading it, is that, they took this out. The Catholics took this out of the canon. And I think it was because they wanted to, just like even the Jewish population is now, they want to revive the priesthood. They want the priesthood to say, hey, we can come to you, you deal with him. But that's not how it works. And if you see what ended up happening over all these years, and again, we're going to be reading this for a while, but this is me summarizing, 24 books. But what you see that happens over the time is that we understand that the priesthood could not be incorruptible. In other words, it would be corrupt, is what I'm trying to say. The priesthood, men, kept corrupting the priesthood, whether it was the kings, the Jews, the man, because of the money, whatever it was. And so the people were unable to get their sacrifices met, right? They're unable to get their atonement for their sins. They're unable to get these things from the priest because the priests are too busy corrupt. And as you see, he even says here later, he says that, and I don't know where it was, but he says that the people, why Nebuchadnezzar was able to come into the holy temple and take it was because God let it go, because the people had already they were mixing religions. They were bringing stuff in the temple that weren't supposed to. They were just not being holy to God. And that's what God needed. And so we then see this huge wars go on for time of God, to me, trying to get them to understand, I need y'all to follow me and listen to me and understand what's happening here, because there's a problem with the priests. And so I don't even know the end of the story where Christ comes in here. I haven't read that far to see where Christ comes in, but think about it. It makes perfect sense, because if you cannot, just like right now, there are people fighting right now in Israel as we speak. You've got the Holy Mount, the Holy Mount Temple. The Holy Mount Temple is right now under a group, let's say a religious group, who basically, says that certain people can worship, certain people can't, right? Jews and Christians cannot worship at the Temple Mount. But, however, there is also a Muslim basilisk, as long as I'm trying to think of the word that I'm trying to say, but it's a holy shrine on the same mount that they can go and pray to, right? And on the same mount is where basically Mohammed ascended, but as well, Moses was given the 10 Commandments. All right, so this is also where the house of Christ, at one time, David's son, right? David, Solomon's son, David, built the temple there. The temple was destroyed once, the temple was destroyed twice. So to this day, there are men preparing, there are priests that have, for example, there are specific rocks they must use. There are specific stones that they only can use in the breastplate. Remember we talked about that, the breastplate of righteousness with all the tribes? They can't be cut with metal. So there are such specific things. And there is already, what's happening right now in Jerusalem is, these men keep wanting to go set the cornerstone for the new temple, for the third temple of Christ. And everybody else is like, no, of course, those who are in control of the mount right now say no, because nothing Christian or Jewish is really allowed to be practiced on the Temple Mount spot. Now, there are other places that you can go pray to the Wailing Wall. There's other spots. Different groups can pray different places. Sometimes I've never been there. I want to go so bad to experience and understand for myself being in that place. But, the understanding is that the priesthood failed. The priesthood could not adequately atone for man's sin. And so we needed a better high priest. We needed a high priest that could not be corrupted by sin. And that's where Jesus comes in. That is where, this is the whole point of why Jesus comes in. Jesus comes in because the understanding that men are corrupt. They were unable to do what God had required and asked of them to do. And so Jesus, in his ultimate wisdom, came down to earth, did the requirements that were necessary so that he could take the place as our high priest. And so now, him being our high priest, we now don't have to go to a man to say, Father, please forgive my sins and bless me. Before, in the old days, they had to kill calves, and that's where it's, again, it's interesting, because if you do have a priest or a father or a rabbi that you go to for your communion, according to the word of God, if you were living in the Old Testament, you would need to shed blood. You would be required to have some type of blood shed for your forgiveness of sins. You don't just go and say, hey, and the priest said, oh, okay, yeah. No, they had to kill animals. They had to, sacrifice things for the forgiveness of your sins. But when Jesus came along, he took that overall sacrificial place and said, all right, you don't have to do sacrifices anymore, but I do want you to remember me. I do want you to remember what I did for you through communion, right? Through the bread and the blood, body and the blood of Christ. I want you to remember, I have come for you, and I'm going to shed my blood to save your sins, because my blood is pure. Jesus didn't sin. No sin. Pure. So he could touch whatever he wanted. He could atone for whoever he wanted because he was pure. These men kept failing. And so it's the whole point that, to me, I think religion really took this out so that you wouldn't have that understanding. And that is, that's, I can't unpack that. That's 40 years of Bible knowledge. And I'm not talking about, this is a new book for me, but, I've been a Christian reading the Bible my whole life. I've always been a Christian. And so this is very perplexing for me. It's very, it's not perplexing. I understand, the devil is at work, even amongst our brothers and sisters. And so, why, how, I don't know. But I do know that reading, I do know that each day I'm finding out more and more about a Christ. It is amazing how accurate he is, how graceful he is, and how much it all makes sense. It's all happening. And, you can look the other way and say, it's not happening and I don't believe. And I challenge you all who, I hope you, most of you I know on here, so I know your beliefs, many of you. Many, I'm hoping to bring here that don't know me. But that being said, I think that this is something that will change the way you think about Christ. And I'm not giving you any knowledge other than reading out of this book. This is straight, I'm reading and then I'm giving you commentary straight out of what's here. I'm not giving you out of what somebody else said about, somebody made up some books about Christ. These are the people that experience these things. And to take away their experiences and say their experiences are not as good written or not as perfected, it's such a disservice, because this book contains some of the most faithful men and women of Christ that I've ever seen. And we're missing that. We're missing that. So I'm going to share that with you. Yes, I'm going to get back into Matthew as well. So you'll have two concurrent series going on at the same time. I'm going to try to ump my recording days up to twice a week so that I can get one in for the Ethiopian Bible and then one in for the Sefer Bible and the New Testament. So kind of like a New Testament, Old Testament going at the same time. So hopefully that won't be too confusing. Let me know if it is. Thank you so much. And sorry, today was a long day, but I hope you enjoyed, because I just really wanted to share some of that knowledge with you. And I pray for you. I pray for the Lord to open your mind, for wisdom to open your mind, and for peace and prosperity to just prosper throughout your life. I love you. I thank you for spending some time. Have a good week. All right.